Stoic wisdom to delete years of mental damage overnight. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about the version of yourself you were supposed to become. The version that was confident, unshakable, clear, purposeful, at peace. Now think about the version of you that actually exists today. What happened between those two people? The answer, in most cases, is not tragedy. It is not bad luck. It is not the absence of opportunity. The answer is damage. Quiet, invisible, accumulated damage. Damage that came from years of being told you were not enough. Years of losing battles in your own mind before the day even began. Years of carrying wounds that nobody ever taught you how to heal. Years of living in a story about yourself that was written by your fears, your failures, and the people who misunderstood you. That damage is real. But it is not permanent. And today, in this video, we are going to delete it. Welcome. If this is your first time on this channel, this is a space built for one purpose: to help you become free. Not free from responsibility. Not free from difficulty. But free from the invisible chains that most people carry through their entire lives without ever questioning whether they chose them. The philosophy we use to do this work is Stoicism. And before you imagine a cold, emotionless philosophy of simply enduring pain without complaint, I want to reframe that completely. Stoicism, at its deepest, is a philosophy of liberation. It is the most practical, battle-tested system of mental transformation ever devised. It was used by a freed slave named Epictetus who had survived unimaginable suffering. It was used by a grieving playwright named Seneca who faced death with open eyes. It was used by Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, who chose every single day to govern himself before he governed his empire. These were not people hiding from life. They were people who had looked directly at the darkest parts of human existence and found a way to remain standing. More than standing, to flourish. Today's video is the deepest we have ever gone. We are going to walk through the complete Stoic framework for healing mental damage, not surface-level advice, not motivational slogans, but the actual, ancient, proven architecture of a mind that cannot be broken. This will take time. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, something will be different in you. I promise you that. And before we begin, if this channel has given you anything real, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell. Because this is what we do here, every single video, and you should not miss a single one. Chapter 1: Understanding the Damage. Before you can delete something, you have to understand what it actually is. Most of us walk around with a vague sense that something is wrong. That we are not operating at full capacity. That there is a version of ourselves somewhere beneath the surface that is more alive, more confident, more free, and we cannot seem to reach it. We call this anxiety. We call this depression. We call this low self-esteem. And sometimes those clinical labels are accurate and important. But the Stoics gave us a more precise language. They called it false judgment. The accumulation of beliefs about yourself and the world that are not true, but that you have repeated so many times, for so long, that they have become indistinguishable from reality. Epictetus was born into slavery. He had no freedom of movement, no control over his body, no legal rights of any kind. And yet he became one of the freest men who ever lived. When his students asked how this was possible, his answer was always the same. My captors could control my body. They could never control my judgments. And my judgments are the only thing that determines whether I am free or enslaved. This is the first insight we need to absorb deeply. Mental damage is not primarily what happened to you. It is what you came to believe about what happened to you. It is the meaning you assigned. The conclusion you drew. The story you constructed. Let me be very clear here, because this is a place where this teaching is sometimes misused. I am not saying your pain is not real. I am not saying the things that were done to you were acceptable. Trauma is real. Abuse is real. Neglect is real. Grief is real. What I am saying is that between what happened and how you live today, there is a gap. And in that gap lives your judgment. Your interpretation. Your story. And that story, unlike the past events themselves, can be changed. The Stoics called this the most important discovery in all of philosophy. Marcus Aurelius returned to it again and again in his private journals. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He was not talking about toxic positivity. He was not saying pretend the obstacle does not exist. He was saying, the obstacle is where the transformation happens. The damage is where the growth begins, if you are willing to look at it honestly. So let us look honestly at the most common forms of mental damage that the Stoics specifically addressed. The first is the damage of comparison. We live in the most comparison-saturated era in human history. Social media has constructed an environment where every waking hour, you are presented with curated highlights of other people's lives, their achievements, their bodies, their relationships, their possessions, and your brain, which was never designed for this level of social comparison, responds with a constant, grinding sense of inadequacy. The Stoics understood comparison as one of the most destructive forces available to the human mind. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more." Comparison does not show you what you lack. It manufactures what you lack. It creates a deficit that did not exist before you looked. The Stoic antidote to comparison is not pretending other people's lives do not exist. It is the radical practice of returning your attention to your own path. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Confine yourself to the present." He meant, your life is here. Your work is here. Your growth is here. Everything else is noise. The second form of damage is the damage of rejection. Every human being alive has been rejected. Rejected by people they loved. Rejected for opportunities they deserved. Rejected by versions of the world that did not see them clearly. And rejection, when it is not processed and released, calcifies. It becomes armor. You stop trying in order to avoid being hurt again. You shrink your ambitions to the size of what feels safe. You tell yourself you are being realistic, but what you are actually doing is letting old pain make decisions about your future. Epictetus taught, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." This is not passive acceptance. This is the discipline of releasing your attachment to outcomes you cannot control. The rejection happened. It cannot be undone. The only question is whether you will let it continue to happen, every day, in your own mind. The third form of damage is the damage of shame. Shame is the belief that you are fundamentally flawed. Not that you made a mistake, but that you are a mistake. And shame, more than almost any other emotion, operates in silence and darkness. It thrives on concealment. The more we hide it, the more power it holds. The Stoics addressed shame with a weapon so simple it is almost disarming: reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The Stoic practice is to examine the source of the shame with clear eyes and ask, is this true? Is this judgment accurate? Or is this a story, given to me by someone else, internalized in a moment of pain, and never questioned since? Most of the shame we carry belongs to someone else. It was placed on us before we had the language or the capacity to refuse it. Deleting it begins with identifying it, naming it clearly, holding it up to the light of reason, and deciding, consciously and deliberately, whether it deserves to continue living inside you. Chapter 2: The Architecture of a Healed Mind. Now we understand the damage. Now we begin to build. The Stoics did not simply teach people to stop suffering. They taught people to build something, an internal structure so solid, so well crafted, so deeply rooted that suffering could not find purchase in it. They called this structure the citadel of the mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But this power does not arise automatically. It is constructed. Deliberately. Brick by brick. Practice by practice. Day by day. The architecture of a healed mind has 5 pillars. Let us build them one at a time. The first pillar is clarity about what you control. This is the foundation of all Stoic practice. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control, and it is perhaps the most powerful single idea in all of philosophy. Everything in your life falls into one of two categories. Things that are up to you, your judgments, your values, your responses, your effort, your character. And things that are not up to you, other people's opinions, the outcome of your efforts, events in the world, your past. Mental damage lives almost entirely in the second category. We spend extraordinary amounts of mental energy trying to control, fix, explain, or escape things that were never in our power to begin with. The exhaustion of this effort, the constant striving against what is one of the primary sources of suffering in human life. When you genuinely internalize the dichotomy of control, something profound happens. You stop fighting the weather. You stop arguing with gravity. You stop pouring your precious energy into the unmovable and redirect it entirely toward what you can actually shape. The practice here is this: every time you feel distress, ask one question. Is this in my control? If yes, what specific action can I take right now? If no, release it. Not suppress it. Not ignore it. But consciously, deliberately, release your grip on it. Say to yourself, this is not mine to carry. This sounds simple. It is not easy. It is one of the most demanding practices in all of Stoicism. Because the mind has spent years, perhaps decades, believing that worry and control are the same thing. That if you think hard enough about something you cannot change, you are somehow protecting yourself. Recognizing that you are not, that the worry is costing you everything and protecting you from nothing, is a profound and sometimes difficult awakening. The second pillar is intentional attention. The Stoics understood that what you give your attention to becomes your reality. Not in a mystical sense. In the most practical, neurological sense available. The things you focus on grow. The stories you rehearse become more vivid and more real. The fears you return to daily become the lens through which you see the world. And the opposite is equally true: the things you withdraw your attention from begin to lose their power. The stories you stop telling gradually fade. The wounds you stop reopening begin to heal. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline obsessively. His private journals, the book we know as the Meditations, are essentially a record of his daily practice of intentional attention. He repeatedly redirects his focus from what is outside his control to what is within it. From complaint to action. From anxiety to present moment engagement. Modern neuroscience has a phrase for this: neuroplasticity. The brain physically changes based on where you direct your attention. The pathways you use most grow stronger. The pathways you stop using weaken. This means that the mental damage you carry is, in many cases, literally a pattern in your neuroarchitecture, and it can be changed. Not instantly. Not without effort. But genuinely, measurably, permanently changed. The practice is simple but relentless. Every time your attention drifts to a story that diminishes you, a replay of a past failure, a rehearsal of a future fear, a comparison that makes you feel small, notice it. Name it. And deliberately redirect. Not to force positivity, but to what is true, what is present, and what is within your power. The third pillar is voluntary discomfort. This is one of the most counterintuitive practices in all of Stoicism, and one of the most powerful. The Stoics practiced what they called negative visualization, deliberately imagining loss, difficulty, and discomfort, not to dwell in despair, but to inoculate themselves against fear. Seneca practiced poverty voluntarily for short periods, eating simple food, wearing rough clothing, sleeping without comfort. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to prove to himself that he could. The logic is this: most of our mental damage is rooted in fear. Fear of loss. Fear of failure. Fear of pain. Fear of rejection. And fear grows most powerfully in darkness, in the things we avoid thinking about, avoid facing, avoid experiencing. When you voluntarily expose yourself to what you fear, in a controlled, intentional way, you discover something life-changing. You discover that you can survive it. More than survive it. You can endure it with dignity. With even a measure of peace. And the fear, which had been feeding on your avoidance, begins to shrink. This is not recklessness. The Stoics were precise about this. You do not seek unnecessary pain. You seek the specific discomfort that your fear has inflated beyond reality. You take the monster out of the darkness, hold it in the light, and see it for what it actually is. The fourth pillar is the practice of amor fati, love of fate. This is, perhaps, the most advanced and most beautiful concept in all of Stoic philosophy. And it is also the one most likely to provoke resistance, so let me approach it carefully. Amor fati means this, not merely accepting what happens, but finding a way to genuinely love it. To say, this happened, and it was mine, and I would not trade it, because it made me what I am. I want to be honest about how hard this is. When I first encountered this idea, it felt impossible. How do you love the things that broke you? How do you love the losses, the betrayals, the years of damage? The Stoics do not ask you to pretend the pain was not real. They ask you to consider this: what would you be without it? Every hard thing you have endured has shaped you. Every loss has deepened your capacity for appreciation. Every failure has refined your judgment. Every wound, if it has not destroyed you, has contributed to the architecture of who you are. Amor fati is not gratitude for suffering. It is the recognition that your story, all of it, including the painful chapters, is yours. And that a life lived in resistance to your own story is a life spent in permanent war with reality. A war you cannot win. When you stop fighting what has already happened and begin to ask, how can I use this? What does this make possible? You discover that the very damage you have been trying to escape has been one of your most important teachers. The fifth pillar is the continuous practice of virtue. The Stoics believed that virtue, living in alignment with your highest values, was the only genuine source of well-being. Not pleasure. Not comfort. Not success as the world defines it. But the daily, active expression of your character. This pillar matters deeply in the context of mental healing because of something the Stoics understood that modern psychology has confirmed: action precedes feeling. You do not wait to feel worthy before you act worthily. You do not wait to feel confident before you act with confidence. You act. And the feeling follows. Every time you act in alignment with your values, every time you are honest when it would be easier to deceive, kind when it would be easier to be cold, disciplined when it would be easier to give in, you are adding a brick to the citadel. You are building evidence that you are trustworthy. And not just trustworthy to others. Trustworthy to yourself. Trusting yourself is the cure for most mental damage. Because the damage, at its root, is often a broken relationship with yourself. A belief, however unconscious, that you cannot be relied upon. That you will abandon your own commitments. That you are not enough. Every act of virtue proves this wrong. Slowly. Quietly. Irrefutably. Chapter 3: The Daily Practice. Philosophy without practice is decoration. The Stoics were clear about this. Zeno of Citium, who founded the school, was famous for the gap between the beauty of his lectures and the stark simplicity of his life. His students came for the ideas but stayed for the example. So let us talk about the actual daily practice of a Stoic life. Not as a rigid prescription, but as a framework you can adapt to your specific circumstances, your specific damage, your specific path. The Stoics divided their day into 3 distinct practices: the morning practice, the evening practice, and the practice of the present moment. The morning practice begins before you engage with the world. Before you check your phone. Before you speak to anyone. Before the demands of the day begin pulling you in 1,000 directions, sit in silence for a minimum of 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, do 3 things. First, prepare your mind for difficulty. Marcus Aurelius began many of his days with this practice. He would think about the people he would encounter, the difficult ones, the demanding ones, the ones who would test his patience and his kindness, and he would remind himself, these people are also human. They are doing the best they know how. They are not enemies. They are fellow travelers. This is not naive. It is strategic. By anticipating difficulty and framing it in advance, you prevent the automatic reactions that have kept you trapped. You are not surprised by the difficult person, because you already prepared for them. You are not hijacked by the frustrating situation, because you already decided how you would respond. Second, identify your one most important commitment for the day. Not a list. One thing. The thing that, if you do nothing else, the day will have meant something. This practice comes from the Stoic understanding that focus is a moral act. To scatter your energy is to betray your potential. To concentrate your energy on one meaningful thing, one day at a time, is to build a life of genuine consequence. Third, set your intention. The Stoics called this prohairesis, the faculty of choice. Before the day begins, choose who you are going to be today. Not what you are going to accomplish, but who you are going to be. Patient, honest, present, disciplined, generous. Name it. Hold it. Carry it into the day like a compass. The practice of the present moment runs throughout the day. This is perhaps the most demanding practice in Stoicism, because it asks something of you every single hour, not just in the quiet moments of morning reflection. The practice is this: in every interaction, in every task, in every moment of transition, return to the present. Fully. Completely. Without division. This sounds like simple mindfulness advice. But the Stoic version has a specific character. It is not merely about being present. It is about being present with purpose. With the awareness that this moment, this exact moment, is where your life is happening. Not in the memory of yesterday. Not in the anticipation of tomorrow. Here. Now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He wrote it not once but many times, in different forms, across the years of his private journal. Because he found it easy to forget. The mind drifts. The worries intrude. The plans demand attention. And again, he had to return himself to this one simple discipline: be here. The specific mental damage of rumination, the habit of replaying painful memories, rehearsing old arguments, relitigating past failures, is only possible when you allow your attention to leave the present. The present has no rumination in it. The present is always only now. And now you are alive. Now you have choices. Now you have power. Every time you catch yourself in rumination, treat it as a bell. Not as a failure. The mind will drift, and catching it is the practice, not proof of inadequacy. Treat it as a bell calling you back. Return your attention to what is in front of you. To the breath in your body. To the task in your hands. To the person in the room with you. Be here. The evening practice closes the day. The Stoics, particularly the followers of Pythagoras who influenced early Stoicism, practiced a nightly review of the day. Seneca described his version: before sleep, review the events of the day with the dispassion of a fair witness. Not a harsh judge. Not a sycophantic advocate. A fair witness. Ask 3 questions. What did I do well today? Name it specifically. Not to flatter yourself, but to identify and reinforce the behaviors that align with your values. What you acknowledge, you repeat. The good things you did today deserve to be seen. Where did I fall short? Again, specifically. Not generally, not I was not good enough, but specifically. In that conversation, I chose impatience over understanding. In that moment, I chose avoidance over honesty. Specific, behavioral, without self-condemnation. What did I learn? Every day, if you are paying attention, teaches you something. About yourself. About other people. About the nature of things. Name what today taught you. Make it conscious. Carry it forward. This evening practice serves 2 functions. First, it gives the day meaning. It ensures that even a difficult day contributed something to your growth and understanding. Second, it prevents the accumulation of unprocessed experience, the backlog of unnamed, unexamined moments that quietly calcify into damage. The Stoics called this self-examination. And they considered it not an optional spiritual practice but a fundamental requirement of an examined life. Socrates said, and the Stoics deeply agreed, that the unexamined life is not worth living. Not because unexamined people are bad, but because without examination, you are not actually living your life. You are being lived by it. Chapter 4: Healing Specific Wounds. Now I want to get specific. Because mental damage does not come in a single form, and healing requires us to address the particular wounds we carry, not just the general concept of damage. Let us talk about 5 specific wounds that the Stoics offer precise medicine for. The wound of betrayal. Betrayal is one of the most destabilizing experiences available to human beings. When someone we trusted, a partner, a friend, a parent, a colleague, acts in fundamental contradiction to the trust we placed in them, the damage is not just relational. It attacks our ability to trust our own judgment. If I was wrong about them, how can I trust my own perception of anything? The Stoic approach to betrayal begins with a radical reframe. Epictetus said, "When you blame others, you give up your power to change." He was not defending the person who betrayed you. He was pointing at something critical. The energy you spend in blame is energy taken away from healing. The wound stays open as long as you need the person who caused it to acknowledge it, apologize for it, or suffer for it. Most betrayers never apologize. Many never even acknowledge what they did. Waiting for that acknowledgement before you heal is giving them permanent power over your peace. The Stoic medicine for betrayal is this: separate the justice of what happened from the process of your healing. What they did may have been wrong, deeply, genuinely wrong. That is not in question. But your healing does not require their correction. Your healing is yours. It lives inside the only territory you actually control. Marcus Aurelius returned again and again to this in his journals. He dealt with betrayal constantly, from people he trusted, from advisors who schemed against him, from generals who failed him. His response was always the same: what is the nature of this person? Are they acting according to their nature, however disappointing? And what is my response? What does my character require of me in this moment? Not forgiveness as a gift to the person who hurt you. Forgiveness as a decision to stop poisoning yourself with their offense. The wound of failure. Failure, in our culture, carries a weight it was never designed to carry. We have built a society that celebrates success with such intensity that failure has become not just a setback but an indictment. Not just something you did. Something you are. The Stoics had a completely different relationship with failure. They saw it as one of the primary teachers available to human beings, and they treated it with a respect bordering on gratitude, not because failure felt good, but because they understood what failure built. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." Every significant achievement in human history was built on a foundation of failure. The question is never whether you will fail. The question is whether you will learn from it and continue. The Stoic practice with failure is the discipline of the obstacle as the path. Marcus Aurelius wrote this as a reminder to himself, in his own private journal, in moments when he was struggling with setbacks that would have broken most people. The obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. When you fail, the Stoic asks, what does this reveal? Not what does it say about me, not the global, shame-laden interpretation. But specifically, practically, what information does this failure contain? What was I wrong about? What did I not understand? What skill do I lack that I can now go build? Failure treated as information is one of the most valuable resources available to anyone pursuing growth. Failure treated as verdict is one of the most paralyzing forces in human life. You choose how to treat it. And that choice determines everything. The wound of grief. Grief is unique among the wounds we carry, because it is not caused by wrongdoing. Grief comes from love. And the Stoics, despite their reputation for emotional distance, understood grief with extraordinary depth. Seneca lost many people he loved. He wrote about grief with more honesty and tenderness than almost any philosopher in history. And his teaching was not, do not grieve. His teaching was, grieve with wisdom. What does this mean? It means, allow yourself to feel the loss fully. The Stoics were not proponents of suppression. They were proponents of processing. Feel what you feel, with full honesty, without dramatization. Let the grief move through you, not build a permanent residence inside you. It also means, remember that what you grieve you had. The grief is not evidence of loss alone, it is evidence of love, of connection, of a life that contains something worth mourning. Seneca wrote to his friend who was grieving, "Think how much you loved. Think what it meant that there was someone in the world whose absence could make the world feel empty. This is not a small thing. This is the evidence of a life well loved." And finally, it means, continue. Not in denial of the grief, but through it. The Stoics saw continuation as one of the most honoring things you could do for someone you had lost. Not moving on, in the sense of forgetting, but moving forward, carrying what they meant to you into the rest of your life. The wound of abandonment. Many people carry this wound from the earliest years of their lives. A parent who left, a caregiver who was absent, a person they needed who was not there. And this wound, more than almost any other, shapes the invisible rules by which we organize our adult lives. We become people who do not ask for help. People who leave before they are left. People who cannot. Chapter 5: The Life That Waits on the Other Side. I want to paint a picture for you. Not a perfect picture. Not a life without difficulty or loss or pain. The Stoics would never promise that, and neither will I. But a picture of what is genuinely, actually available to a human being who does this work. Who commits to the daily practice of building the citadel. Who decides, moment by moment, to engage with life from the inside out rather than being perpetually battered by the outside in. What does that life look like? It looks like waking up without the weight. You know the weight I am talking about. The one that is there before you are fully conscious in the morning. Before you have even remembered what specifically you are worried about, the weight is already there. A heaviness. A dread. A sense that the day is already a threat. The person who has done this work wakes up differently. Not always cheerfully. The Stoics were not cheerful propagandists. But without the weight. With a sense that the day is an arena they are equipped for. With the quiet confidence of someone who knows themselves, their values, their capacities, their limits, and has made peace with all of it. It looks like relationships that are not exhausting. When you are no longer looking to other people to fill the holes in your own sense of worth. When you are no longer carrying the weight of abandonment and betrayal and all the invisible rules they created, you can actually be present with another person. You can hear them. You can enjoy them. You can let them in without the constant background calculation of whether they are about to leave, whether you are enough, whether this is safe. The Stoics had a word for this kind of presence: philanthropia. Love of humanity. The genuine, uncomplicated delight in the company of other people, not as a source of what you need, but as fellow travelers on the same strange and brief journey. Seneca wrote to his friend, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Not use. Not performed for. Not depend on. Associate. Freely. With joy. With the security of someone who does not need the relationship to survive, and therefore can fully enjoy it." It looks like work that means something. One of the quiet catastrophes of mental damage is what it does to your relationship with your own work. When you are spending half your mental energy managing anxiety, ruminating on the past, and navigating the exhausting complexity of unhealed wounds, you have very little left for creation. For genuine contribution. For the work that, if you are honest with yourself, you know you are capable of. The Stoic life clears the ground. Not by eliminating difficulty, but by ensuring that the energy you have is not being leaked into things that do not deserve it. And in that cleared ground, something grows. A capacity for deep work. A patience with the long game. A willingness to pursue what matters without needing constant external validation that you are on the right track. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He fought wars. He managed political intrigue. He faced loss and grief and betrayal. And he wrote, in the private pages of his journal, "Do your job, then step back. Not for recognition. Not for legacy. For the simple, profound satisfaction of doing what is yours to do, as well as you can do it, in the time you have been given." It looks like a different relationship with time. The healed person, or more accurately, the person who is actively and consistently doing the work of healing, has a different relationship with time than most people. Not because they have more of it, but because they are actually present for it. Most of us live somewhere other than our lives. We live in the past, in memories that either comfort or wound us. We live in the future, in plans and hopes and fears that have not arrived. We live anywhere but the actual present moment, which is the only place anything real ever happens. The Stoic practice of present moment engagement is not a technique for productivity. It is a technique for actually being alive. For having a life that, at the end, you can look back on and say, I was there. I experienced it. It was mine. Seneca wrote, in one of the most striking passages in all of ancient literature, near the end of his own life. Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life. Not someday. Not when the damage is healed. Not when the conditions are right. Now. Today. This day, which is the only day you are actually given. The decision. We have covered a vast amount of ground today. We have talked about the nature of mental damage, what it actually is and how it works. We have built the 5 pillars of a healed mind. We have walked through the daily practice that makes the philosophy real. We have addressed specific wounds with specific medicine. And we have painted a picture of the life that this work makes possible. Now I want to speak directly to you. Not to the general audience. To you specifically, the person who is still here. You are still here because something in this video is true for you. Something landed. Something resonated in a way that felt less like new information and more like a recognition, like you were hearing something you already knew but had not yet found the words for. That recognition is important. It means this is not just philosophical entertainment for you. It means something in you is ready. And readiness is the beginning of everything. The Stoics did not believe in waiting for the right moment. They believed in making this moment the right moment. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." What is in your power right now, in this moment? You can decide. Not to fix everything immediately. Not to become a different person overnight. But to decide, firmly, clearly, without conditions, that you are no longer willing to be defined by your damage. That you are no longer willing to let old wounds make current decisions. That the story you have been telling about yourself, for however many years, is not the final story. You can decide to begin. And beginning is everything. Marcus Aurelius understood that the Stoic life is not a destination. It is a direction. Every day, you are either moving toward the person you intend to become, or you are drifting away from them. The quality of your life is determined not by where you are, but by which direction you are facing. Face the direction of clarity. Face the direction of discipline. Face the direction of presence and virtue and the quiet, unshakable strength that comes from knowing, really knowing, that your peace does not depend on anyone or anything outside of you. This is what the ancient philosophers devoted their lives to understanding. This is what Marcus Aurelius wrote about in his most private moments. This is what Epictetus taught from chains. This is what Seneca pursued all the way to his death. They were not superhuman. They were not born enlightened. They were people, flawed, struggling, sometimes failing people, who decided to do the work. Who chose, every day, to examine their minds and build their character and refuse to let damage have the final word. You can make the same choice. And if you are ready to make it, if you want to continue this journey, to go deeper into the practices and philosophy that can genuinely transform your relationship with your own mind, then do one thing right now. Subscribe to this channel. This is not a small request, and I am not making it casually. This channel is built with intention and care. Every video is designed to give you something real, not inspiration that fades by morning, but wisdom that changes how you think, how you respond, how you live. The community that is building here, the people who are choosing this path, who are doing this work, who are deciding that their potential is worth pursuing, is growing. And it is exactly the kind of community that Seneca meant when he wrote about the importance of associating with people who make you better. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Leave a comment below, tell me which wound resonated most with you today. Which chapter hit closest to home. Because I read every comment, and your experience matters to how this channel continues to grow. Share this video with someone who needs it. You know who they are. The person who is struggling and does not have the words for it yet. The person who is carrying damage they do not know how to put down. Give them this. And come back. Because this is not a single video. This is a practice. And we are doing it together. I will see you in the next on.